Did you buy a desert rose with those spectacular flowers, those pink and red trumpets that seem impossible on such a small plant? And in just a few weeks, it already has yellow leaves, soft stems, and that feeling that this special plant is dying without you being able to do anything to prevent it. You water it sparingly because you know it doesn't like excess water. You put it in the sun because you know it needs it, and yet it's still there, growing duller and weaker every day, as if it had decided to give up prematurely. Today that ends. With a cup of something you produce in your kitchen every time you make guacamole or salads, and which always ends up in the trash, you are going to revive that desert rose in less than 15 days. You will see it explode with those extraordinary flowers that make anyone seeing it for the first time unable to believe such a plant actually exists. And stay until the end, because I will reveal the secret that ensures this blooming isn't just a flash of a few days, but an explosion of flowers that returns season after season, stronger every time. Before talking about what you have in your kitchen, you need to understand something about the desert rose that almost no one explains when selling it, and which is exactly the reason why this plant, so resilient in its natural habitat, dies so easily in homes around the world. The desert rose, or Adenium for those who like the scientific name, comes from the most arid regions of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. In those places, it grows under a scorching sun, in soils with almost no nutrients, going for entire months without a single drop of rain, and yet it blooms with an intensity that leaves you speechless. It is a plant that evolved to survive in extreme conditions, and precisely because of that, it has very specific internal mechanisms that only activate when the conditions are exactly right. And the most frequent problem with the desert rose at home is not watering, although that matters too. It's the substrate. The vast majority of people who buy this plant leave it in the generic potting soil it comes with from the nursery, which almost always retains too much moisture and lacks the mineral structure this plant needs for its roots to function properly. The roots of the desert rose, that characteristic bulb that grows above the soil, are extraordinarily sensitive to stagnant moisture. In a substrate that doesn't drain well, even if you water sparingly, those roots begin to deteriorate silently, long before any visible symptoms appear on the aerial part of the plant. And I want to tell you something else about that dormancy cycle, which I find to be one of the most fascinating aspects of this plant from an agronomic point of view. During that period of apparent rest, when the desert rose loses all its leaves and seems completely dead, the bulb continues to carry out very intense, silent metabolic activity. It is synthesizing reserves of starch and energetic compounds that it will later invest in the next blooming. Plants that have a more developed and healthier bulb produce more abundant blooms exactly because they accumulated more reserves during the resting period. That is why caring for the desert rose during its resting period, even if it seems like nothing is happening, is just as important as caring for it when it is full of flowers. There is something else I learned after losing several desert roses without understanding the reason. This plant has a dormancy cycle that many gardeners interpret as death. In the coldest months or during periods of water stress, the desert rose can lose all its leaves and become completely bare, with only those fleshy stems and that peculiar bulb visible. Many people at that moment believe the plant is dead and throw it away. But inside that bulb, there are energy reserves waiting for the right conditions to wake up again with impressive force. What looks like death is almost always rest. Tell me in the comments what state your desert rose is in right now. Does it have leaves? Has it lost them all? Does it still have any flowers? And also tell me from which city you are watching us today, because I love knowing in which corners of the world there are desert roses waiting to wake up. Mrs. Beatrice from Caracas had been buying desert roses for 2 years that lasted barely a few months before losing all their leaves and never blooming again. She found the Extraordinary Gardener's Manual in the description, the same tips I use every day in my own garden, and since then she has 3 plants on her terrace that bloom twice a year with an intensity her neighbors cannot explain. Over 2,300 people already have it. 99.8% positive reviews, 50% off only this month. 7-day no questions asked guarantee. Every week that passes without taking action is another week without those extraordinary flowers. The link is in the description. Enter now. What follows is the explanation of why a cup of avocado seed water does what no nursery fertilizer can do for your desert rose so completely and for free. The avocado seed, that large round seed we take out of the avocado before making guacamole or a salad, which we look at for a second because it seems too big to throw away, and yet almost always ends up in the trash. Well, that seed contains something extraordinary for a plant like the desert rose. The avocado seed is one of the most concentrated natural sources of tannins that exist in any kitchen in the world. Tannins are polyphenolic compounds with very potent antifungal and antibacterial properties that act as natural defenders of the root system in plants. For the desert rose, whose roots are so sensitive to soil pathogens that take advantage of any moment of stress to settle in, the supply of tannins from irrigation water can be exactly the difference between a plant that recovers and one that continues to deteriorate despite all the care. But tannins are not the only thing that makes the avocado seed extraordinary for this plant. It contains lauric acid in significant concentrations, that fatty acid with natural antiseptic properties that reinforces the cell membranes of the roots, making them more resistant to both pathogens and sudden variations in temperature and humidity. A root with membranes reinforced by lauric acid can withstand conditions that would normally damage it, which translates directly into a more resilient plant that is better able to maintain its blooming cycle without interruptions. And something else about the avocado seed that I think is important to mention so you can adapt depending on what you have available. If at any point you don't have fresh avocado at home, you can use the dried husk of the seed you have saved from previous avocados. Store dried seeds in a cool, dark place and use them within the next 3 months. After that time, the tannins begin to degrade and the active concentration decreases. Fresh seeds will always give better results than dried ones, but well-preserved dried seeds are still perfectly useful. And there is something else that makes the avocado seed especially perfect for the desert rose. It contains potassium and phosphorus in organic forms, which are exactly the two minerals this plant needs most urgently to activate its blooming mechanism. Phosphorus activates the formation of flower buds. Potassium energizes the tissue of the stems that support those heavy and spectacular flowers. Without those two minerals available simultaneously, the desert rose may have healthy leaves and a bulb in good condition, but it won't produce flowers because it lacks the chemical tools to build them. Hey, scroll down and subscribe right now, turn on the notification bell, and tell me in the comments what color your desert rose flowers are, because I know they come in pink, red, white, bicolor, and each one is more beautiful than the last. Let the nursery of special fertilizers for Adenium sleep peacefully for now. Now we are going to prepare the treatment together step by step. Before the recipe, let me give you the most important agronomic advice for the desert rose. If yours is in generic potting soil that retains a lot of moisture, the first step before any treatment is to improve the substrate. Mix the current soil with coarse sand or perlite in a 1-to-1 ratio. That mixture drains water quickly and leaves the soil almost dry within a few hours after each watering, exactly as the occasional rains would do in the African desert, where this plant grew for millions of years. With that correct substrate, any treatment you apply will work twice as effectively. Now comes the cup of avocado seed water. Take a fresh avocado seed from an avocado you just ate. Peel it by removing that outer brown layer and cut it into small pieces to increase the surface area in contact with the water. Boil it in 1 liter of water for 20 minutes. The water will take on a very characteristic pink or reddish color, which gets more intense the longer you boil it. Let it cool completely to room temperature. Filter it with a fine strainer to remove all solid remains. Take 1 cup of that concentrated liquid and dilute it in 2 liters of clean water at room temperature. Apply that diluted solution by watering directly onto the substrate in a circular pattern around the bulb of the plant. Never on top of the bulb, because direct moisture on that fleshy tissue can cause rot, once every 10 days during the first month. The desert rose needs periods of drought between waterings, so respect that 10-day gap. even if the soil seems very dry before that time. Store the rest of the concentrated solution in a sealed bottle in the refrigerator, where it will easily last for 5 days. Before moving on to the results, I want to ask you something. Did you know that the desert rose can live for decades and become a natural bonsai with spectacular flowers if cared for correctly? The oldest plants I have seen had thick, twisted trunks like small trees and bloomed twice a year with an abundance that left you speechless. Tell me in the comments how long yours has been with you, because I like to imagine what it can become with the right care. The results you are going to see are the following, explained with honesty and precision. In the first 5 days, the roots will begin to absorb the tannins, phosphorus, and potassium from the solution. You won't see anything visible on the plant yet, but internally something important is happening. Soil pathogens are retreating from the tannins, and the roots are gaining access to nutrients they hadn't been able to absorb properly for a long time. By day 7 or 8, if the plant had leaves, you will see them firmer and with a more intense color. If it had lost all its leaves, small shoots will start to appear at the nodes of the stems, that beautiful sign that the bulb was alive and waiting for the right signal to wake up. By day 12 or 13, those shoots are already recognizable little leaves, and the stems show clear signs of renewed activity. And by day 15, if the plant was mature enough and the bulb was in good condition, the first flower buds will start to appear at the tips of the stems. Those little dots that in a few days will turn into those extraordinary flowers. And an additional tip about the sun exposure of the desert rose that completely changes the results of the treatment. This plant needs a minimum of 6 hours of direct sun a day to activate its blooming mechanism. With less sun, it can survive and maintain its leaves. But the light signal that triggers the production of flower buds requires that minimum intensity. If you have it in a place with less sun and the avocado treatment doesn't produce flower buds after the first month, before increasing the dose of the treatment, check how many hours of direct sun it receives. Moving it to a brighter location might be all it needs for the buds to appear almost immediately. Mr. Patricio from Asuncion had a desert rose that bloomed only once a year for 2 weeks, followed by months of waiting. He found the extraordinary gardener's manual in the description, the same tips I use every day in my own garden. He applied the avocado seed treatment and pruned the wilted flowers, and that same plant went on to bloom 3 times in a year, with each batch more abundant than the last. Over 2,300 people already have it. 99.8% positive reviews, 50% off only this month. 7-day no questions asked guarantee. Don't let your desert rose go another season without giving you those extraordinary flowers. The link is in the description. Enter right now. Before finishing, I want to give you the secret I promised from the beginning, the one that makes that blooming return season after season, stronger every time. The desert rose blooms with greater intensity in each cycle when it is allowed to complete a full resting period between blooms. That resting period is not a problem or a sign that something is wrong. It is exactly what it needs to accumulate the energy it will invest in the next explosion of flowers. What makes that rest shorter and the next blooming more abundant is a very simple combination. When the flowers begin to wilt, cut them off completely from the base of the flower stalk with clean scissors. That cut eliminates the ethylene signal that would tell the plant the cycle is over, and it can rest indefinitely. And during that resting period, cut the watering in half, but maintain the bi-weekly application of avocado seed water, which continues to gently feed the roots while the plant rests. With that combination, the resting period between one blooming and the next can be reduced from several months to just 4 or 6 weeks. And each new blooming arrives with a little more intensity than the previous one, because the plant enters the new cycle with healthier roots and more accumulated reserves, thanks to the continuous supply of tannins and minerals from the avocado. And something else about the period between blooms that is worth understanding well. The desert rose does not bloom continuously like other plants. It blooms in intense batches, separated by resting periods. Trying to force continuous blooming without respecting those resting periods depletes the bulb's reserves and produces increasingly weaker blooms. The goal is not to have flowers every day, but to have intense and abundant blooms 2 or 3 times a year, with each batch more impressive than the last. And one final detail about the temperature of the irrigation water that can noticeably accelerate the results. The desert rose, being a plant of desert origin, prefers water at room temperature or even slightly warm, never cold. In the African deserts, where it grows wild, when it rains, the rainwater always has the temperature of the warm environment. Watering with cold water straight from the tap can cause a thermal microshock in the roots that temporarily halts the absorption of the tannins and minerals from the treatment. Always let the water sit for at least 20 minutes at room temperature before applying the avocado seed solution. Subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. And tell me in the comments if, after watching this video, you are going straight to the kitchen to look for an avocado seed. Because if so, you are on the right track. Welcome to the family of gardeners who know how to take advantage of what others throw away. Give this video a big like right now, the kind you give when something truly changes the way you look at a seed you've always discarded without a second thought. And tell me from which beautiful country you are watching us today and what color your desert rose flowers are. I'm dying to read your comments. May every seed you sow germinate. May every flower you care for bloom, and may every day in your garden be a gift. Many blessings to you and yours. Until next time, family. If this story has changed the way you look at your kitchen waste and you want to see your plants bloom like never before, subscribe and like our channel. We are unearthing the secrets of nature that others try to ignore. Sow the future with us. The next treasure of your garden will open very soon.